in my life, and I appreciate it.
Brother, cut that back.
You know, like I said, I always try to express my appreciation, to everybody. It's a lot of
Perspective, real empowerment, you better be respected. Lady Fresh on the motherfucking check-in. Luigi got her back, she stay protected. Just a fresh perspective, real empowerment, you better be respected. It's for the dreamers, it's to get you through the night. Not for the haters that they don't come outside.
Lady Fresh Brown, and that's kind of started from there.
Rock bottle on the track, boy.
Yeah. Lady Fresh, keep it real, and that's a fact. She gon' tell it like it is, that's just that on that. Yeah, that's just that on that. This the fresh perspective with Lady Fresh. Lady Fresh, keep it real, and that's a fact. She gon' tell it like it is, that's just that on that. Yeah, that's just that on that. Tune in every week, rockin' with Lady Fresh.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Fresh Perspective. I am your host, the one and only Lady Fresh. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera on. Hey, guys. So we are at the conclusion of our wonderful series, the Autism Awareness Series. This is part 3. Hopefully you guys got a chance to tune in to parts 1 and parts 2. Part 1, we had our psychotherapist, Miss Jen Slayton. She was a licensed clinical social worker, and she gave us the perspective from a psychotherapist and talked about actually diagnosing autism and some ways to identify autistic traits in children and in adults. We talked a lot about things that we may be overlooking, some of the common misconceptions. And then we did part 2 with Miss Callie and Dr. Emmy. That was another wonderful episode. Those ladies came and they spoke on the parent perspective. And they talked about raising children with autism. Miss Callie has a younger child that was just diagnosed about 30 days ago. So we got her perspective as a new parent and some of the frustrations that she's facing. And Dr. Emmy, while she is a doctor, didn't speak from the doctor's perspective. However, she spoke as a parent who has raised a successful adult. He is now 23, fully functioning. He's out of the home. He's in college, preparing to graduate. And she was able to give a lot of perspective on, raising a child that's highly functioning, some of the common misconceptions from a parent perspective, and also, give Miss Callie and other viewers who may not know where to turn once they get the diagnosis. They were able to really dialogue with one another and with the chat and really explain a lot of things that we may not understand from the parent's perspective. So it was a wonderful episode. If you didn't watch it, please make sure you go back and watch the rebroadcast. If you are in the chat right now, please like, share, and subscribe the stream. I think it's super important what we're doing here. And I don't want anybody to miss it, you guys. So this is our 3rd episode. And today we have the lovely Elizabeth Rose with us. And she's going to be speaking from the therapist perspective. And her background is art therapy. And I'm not going to give too much information because I want Liz to be able to break down what it is that she does and how it aids in, helping autistic adults and autistic children. We're going to get into it from a different perspective. And so I'm still working on trying to bring another guest on the show. before the month is over so that we can discuss autism from someone on the firsthand perspective that can tell you what it's like living in, with autism. And, they can tell you firsthand, things that they've dealt with throughout life, what it's like today, what it was like, during diagnosis, if they were diagnosed as an adult or a child, maybe some of the trials and tribulations they may have had to overcome. So I definitely want to be able to bring that perspective as well. But today we're going to be talking to Elizabeth Rose. And as I prepare to bring her up, you guys, please, please, please give her a round of applause as I bring up Miss Elizabeth Rose. Hi.
Hello, hello. Can you
How
hear me?
are I can hear you. You sound wonderful. And you
Awesome.
look beautiful. How are you today?
I am good. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here. Just so that you guys know, Liz actually kind of was the trigger for me to do this series. We were kind of sitting around and we were talking about different things, and I was trying to figure out what my April awareness was going to be. It didn't take me long to decide. You guys, I kind of just play with the different topics and decide what I want to tackle. And when I decided that I was going to do autism awareness, lo and behold, Liz just talked about being a art therapist and how art therapy can be very beneficial in that situation. And so, I knew that we couldn't cover everything in just one show. Usually I do one show. MS was one show. Thyroid disease was one show. And I couldn't cover all of that stuff in one show. So I definitely wanted to give this topic the respect that it definitely deserved. And so we have Elizabeth Rose here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the therapist perspective. So Elizabeth, I'm going to hand
Mm-hmm.
you and have you talk to us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, who you are and how you got into becoming a licensed creative art therapist. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did. You got it. All right. Hi everybody. I'm happy to be here. Glad you guys are tuning in. Um, as I explain like what I do, if you guys have questions, I'll try my best to answer as we go, but we'll have some questions at the end. But just to start, I am a New York State licensed creative arts therapist. I got into art therapy, I guess I didn't know what it was until I went to college, like right after high school when graduated, and they're like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And I was like, I don't know. But I was always interested in art from a young age, from as young as I can remember, from like kindergarten. And then I participated in a bunch of artistic things, and I liked science. And then just growing up, like I realized that people would vent to me or like would speak to me about like issues and concerns, and I was always that friend to like be a listening ear. So once someone shared with me like art therapy, do you know about that? I was like, no, like what is it? So I figured out that it was a career that I could go into. So I did going into college. I decided to double major in psychology and studio art. And then that's what helped me to decide going after graduating 4 years at Franklin and Marshall College. When I came back to New York, I looked at Pratt Institute and I attended Pratt for 2 years and got my master's in creative arts therapy. So that was in 2015. I graduated from college in 2014. And I was at Pratt for 2 years from 15 to 17. I consider that time to be the beginning of my art therapy career. And I'll be speaking from my perspective from my first internship when I started working with the autistic population with young kids, toddlers. So much of my experience has started from working with toddlers at first, but I do have experience as an art therapist, working as a recovery counselor and with adults all the way up to senior citizens. So, yeah, I'm here to talk about that and then answer some questions that people might have.
Yeah, she highly educated. Y'all heard her say she got that master's degree. Let me see those hand claps in the chat, you guys. We got a highly educated young lady here, and she's gonna be talking to us about what art therapy is. So,
Mhm.
we got a little bit about your background. Now, before we talk about how it's effective in the autism community, can you tell us exactly what art therapy is if someone has never heard of it?
Yes. So, art therapy, it's one of the four disciplines um, of creative arts therapy. So, if you can go to my next slide so you guys can see a visual, because I'm all about the visual. Art therapists,
Thing
we
with her
incorporate the
son,
visual
y'all,
arts
was
into everything.
ready.
And I do a lot of workshops in professional development right now, so I always do this on a regular anyway. So creative arts therapy or CAT, and you'll see cats here and there. I'm a Pratt cat, so I went to Pratt, and I'm a creative arts therapist. So you'll probably hear me say Pratt cat and see some cats because I like cats, right? Just to let y'all know. But
I will
creative
hold that
arts,
you like cats against you. I'm not gonna hold that against you.
I don't have any cats, so I had to add some images here, which y'all see. They're so cute.
I love
Um,
it.
but creative arts therapy, it's a mental health field, a licensed mental health field where you need to have a master's degree and a license in order to practice. So the goal of it is it's an expressive means to help people overcome different things. So like emotional concerns, mental health concerns through a creative process, right? So some of the four disciplines, and I've worked with different therapists in each of these realms. One is an art therapist, which is what I do. So it would be with a licensed art therapist, and it varies from state to state. I'm licensed in New York State. And that includes doing like studio art, drawing, painting, sculpture, photography. And it's to help someone develop like emotional awareness, self esteem, helping with like intellectual disabilities, or helping someone express themselves, because sometimes, and I know even me, everybody, there's just sometimes where you feel something and you can't put it into words. That's what the
Mhm.
creative arts will help you do, to help you process that, do not just like psychotherapy, because creative arts therapy, especially in art therapy, we are psychotherapists, but what's awesome is that we're able to have a nonverbal way of processing. So psychotherapy is talk therapy, but in art we have a nonverbal way to help you process that. So that's what an art therapist does. Then there's dance therapy. So it's using movement and dance to help support the emotional development and awareness and healing. Then the same thing with music. So I know I've seen videos. You guys probably seen it too. Like there's some people who might have an intellectual disability. They might be on the spectrum or whatever the case may be, and they are geniuses at playing the piano or like some type of music. But people, that's just their language, right? So music might be a way for them to help relieve stress or promote expression and emotional healing. And then there's drama, right? All of our actors out there, you see some kids who are just like, they're killing it, like it's natural, right? Some kids, they might be more introverted, but if you put them in a drama environment, they're killing it. You can see like they're the whole like opposite of when you see them in their not true introverted state. So drama therapy is like theater, using that for emotional expression and healing as
Wow. So it covers basically all of the different forms of arts, whether it be performing
well.
arts or, written drawing, things like that. So I know growing up for me, dance was very therapeutic for me.
Hmm.
I was able to express myself through dance as well as writing. For those of y'all that don't know, I was a really good writer back in the day. But it's nice to see that this can be used as another form, for nonverbal type of therapy. Like this is amazing. Um,
Hmm.
is there one particular area that tends to cater more? So if we're talking about autistic children, for instance,
Hmm.
is there one area more than others that might be a little bit more popular? Like, do your kids tend to rear more towards the art portion or the music portion, or is it pretty even all the way across?
If that's an interesting question. I can't give like one answer and it's completely correct. From my experience, I would say like our natural tendency is to start with art, like at a young age, right? We like scribble, like we're into like water and like play. Like a lot of that has to do with some expression through like arts and stuff. So I would say art is might be like an initial like way of getting into it. But I guess it depends on the child, right? So it depends on how they interact. Maybe art is more suitable for a child based on their interest or what you see, what you can observe that they like to do. Dance might be music or drama, right? So it really depends. But I would say maybe art because everyone from a young developmental stage goes into art. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I figured it would be for some reason when I thought of art therapy, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I thought of was art, drawing, because that's like a fundamental thing. Like it's even taught, music is too, dance, drama, but like there's something really fundamental about drawing pictures or sketches or painting. So that was the first thing that I thought. But I was always curious, like if kids would tend to rear towards one over the other. But it sounds like, it doesn't matter which one, it's
Mm-hmm.
all beneficial. So tell us a little bit about how art therapy specifically um,
Mm-hmm.
can help with autism in children, and then if you could tell us also how it can help with adults.
Of course. So I can start from my experience in my first internship in grad school, where I worked with toddlers. So there I was working with two types of classes. So one was a class where I had like 6 to 8 children who were on the spectrum, all different abilities, different sensory or auditory stimulations were very different. And then I worked with a class that had like, it was called an inclusion class. So that would in New York public schools might be like a special ed type of class where there's like different kids on different levels. So there might be some kids who are like on a typical, like normal type of education path, or and then some they might have IEPs or individual education plans. So with my class that I had with the children who are on the spectrum, um, we had like a routine. It had, and even with the other class, but like a routine was very important. And you can see from the beginning of the school year to like mid school year, end of the school year, just like how the kids come in. Of course, is if it's they're new, right? Developing a routine and getting used to it, it takes some time. But you can see like a lot of it was like the routines, like you come in, sit down, we're saying hi and make sure that we're aware of everyone who's in the room before we go into um, an activity. So it was really about just like having like a way to engage them initially and just a check in with them, and encouraging them to be like self-aware and express themselves, because that's what a lot of concern was, where like they, communication, right? We It's hard for us normally to communicate, especially for children with autism. It takes a little bit more time and more support. So that was very important to do that. And then there is different teachers that I had in the classroom for support. So it takes a village, just have to say, even though I was the therapist and like maybe the expert in the room with art and whatnot, had to be able to delegate and like let the teachers know, like, do this, do that. So like it took a village to be able to support each child. And then some children needed more support than others. So that's where it varies also, um, with the like toddlers.
And so with
And
the art, oh, go ahead. No, keep going.
I was just going to say, and then like with adults, it was very different. Like in my experience as a recovery counselor and art therapist, working with adults, you can see more of like the social aspect, like how they might struggle to like be socially engaged in a group,
Mhm.
or just like comments and whatnot. So it's like learning how to redirect them into a conversation or how to include them in a conversation in a group. So at least with the adults that I work with who were on the spectrum, they had already developed a lot of the skills that through like other therapies and with other like therapists. But even though like in a social group or in the art therapy group, it was still very difficult and they needed some direction or redirection. So not as much support as you have to do like hands on hand, like
Mhm.
taking a child's hand, like let's do this, let's learn how to hold something. Um, Still do that kind of with adults if you're introducing new materials, but it's more of like the social engagement and getting them involved and engaged and expressive that way.
So I know you do a lot of work within like the public school system, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so we're going to get into that, but so do you do the majority of your art therapy? Is it more of a group setting or are there instances where you're working with one child at a time?
So it's primarily group art therapy. However, if there was like a child who needed individual support, I've done individual. So I had like one child, I loved him, so cute. To this day, like I wish I could just see him like every day. But I worked with him because he was nonverbal, eye contact. Um, it wasn't He wasn't making eye contact, he wasn't speaking, not really aware, be like isolated, wouldn't engage. So I worked with him one-on-one to help him start to speak and develop language and to be self-aware and like engage with like classmates and whatnot. And over time he started to speak. He said my name, and at the beginning of the year, there was like nothing, like the eye contact, like I had to like verbally say everything and just like kind of be like close in his face. And like I said, I might mention like hand over hand. So it's just like, um, holding a child's hand and just like, okay, now we're going to do this, time to do this. So you have to like verbalize everything. And I had to. There might have been like one art activity that I've done like 10 times in a row, maybe, and that's
Mhm.
because that was just to get him in a routine to see like if he knows like what the steps are, and eventually that worked. And like once you see some progress there, then you can move on to the next like plan. So yeah, that's how it was like when I was working with like an individual toddler. With adults, it's a little bit different. It was just like self-expression. And that one was like more of like an open studio. And when I say open studio, meaning like I can introduce whatever materials and they can choose what they want to do, or I can give options, because options is very important. Because what I noticed in like the adult that I worked with in the individual session, he had a hard time making decisions. So had to narrow it down to like this or this based on what I know that he likes or engages with. So having options is very important. But over time, if they can progress past options, then you can have like introduce more materials without, setting a certain type of like materials out.
Okay. And so you have to have a pretty set plan as to how you're going to work with the kids before they even arrive and then you customize according to the child.
Yeah, so it would be like we would call it a treatment plan, right? So even though you might think like, oh, it's art, like how is it treatment? It is important to note like all artwork is clinical documentation. So I was thinking like when you asked me to come on the show, I was like, oh man, I have like images because I've done a presentation about the child that I'm speaking of, but I don't have permission from parents as a while ago, and it is confidential. So you can't just show like artwork because it is clinical documentation. So it's important to have a
Okay.
treatment plan, um, and the certain materials that you introduce at a certain time to help induce like language, for example. So like um, fluid materials like paint, so like dealing with water, those materials are known to help encourage language. So that was a goal that we worked to, but there were like some things that we needed to focus on, like sensory motor, hand-eye coordination before we got to that part.
Okay.
So you kind of have to like make a treatment plan and work from that and take notes on the progress before you can move forward to using other materials.
Okay. So you're a therapist, and I know you said that you basically are pretty well rounded. You do a lot of the same training as psychotherapists.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
Yes.
means that you are equipped to handle the meltdowns, or, when a child may be nonverbal. The art therapy is there to help with those things. What
Mm-hmm.
is it like when you receive a new child into your program that may have a lot of issues with meltdowns? What are some of the techniques that you might use for a child that experiences things like that, especially if it's like separation? I know, some kids have separation issues just because they don't like to be away from their parents, but I'm assuming that it can be magnified sometimes with a child that has autism. What
Mm-hmm.
kind of techniques may you use to try to get that child calm and comfortable enough to proceed with the lesson?
Mm-hmm. Well, from what initially comes to my mind is working with the parent. The parent is with the child always, right? So you might have a child who, they come into therapy for a certain behavioral concern, right? The best thing to do during like an intake, so that initial meeting of like sharing what you want the therapy to be for, to give as much information as possible, because we don't know the child, right? If there was like other therapists, right? So we consider notes from like other therapists, and we collaborate with other therapists. So we get that information from the parent, and then we'll take that to help decide what the sessions will look like, right? But also consider what transitioning routines are in place, right? So if a child is melting down, it's triggered by something, right? So to understand how a child is supported during the transition, and what can be implemented to help them during the transition or during a behavioral crisis, it's important to collaborate with the parent, other notes, and just observation over time. Because it's not going to be like I see this one time, bang, I know it. I know what I'm going to do. Because it varies, right? Our mood varies normally, so we just have to observe and understand like patterns, and then go from there.
Okay. And so you said that parents remain. So the parent stays for all art therapy sessions?
No, so I haven't had a session with the parent. However, it was in a public school setting, right? So there are like parent teachers when they come to check in, or like if I need to speak to a parent during like maybe something happened or something I noticed, I call the parent to say, hey, this is what happened. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Or um, maybe they might just like notice something, just like, hey, I noticed this is new. So we would collaborate that way. Um, I believe I have an experience where a parent is in a session with me, but I'm pretty sure that that is a possibility if the parent can. But I was working in a public school setting, so it's hard to do that. They can't have a parent in a class with like other students and whatnot. So the individual session, if they could make it for the individual session, I don't see why that would be an issue. Especially because if it's going to help a parent with a certain situation that they don't have control over yet, and the reason for them coming to therapy is to help them, then it would make sense that they might participate in a session.
Now, have you ever worked with like a family, as far like an autistic family at once?
No,
No?
no,
Okay. So it would always be an individual
an
or
individual.
okay, got you.
Hmm.
Got you. Okay. All right. I'm learning. Y'all, I hope y'all learning a lot. Y'all listening. Just really quickly at the bottom of the screen, and I just put it in the chat as well. You can follow Liz on LinkedIn. A lot of information there, her background and some of what she does. So you guys make sure you check her out on LinkedIn. That's her profile information. You guys can also, did you have an IG you wanted up? I didn't put it in there. I'm slacking.
No,
I know you
because
said
my
it was under
IG,
construction.
yeah, I have
Okay, well,
something in
I'm
the
gonna make
works, but
sure.
it's not ready
Okay,
yet. Yeah.
you did tell me that. Okay, so we're gonna make sure as soon as she gets it up and running, you guys, this is gonna be a consistent thing. I don't believe that we're gonna just talk about this during autism awareness. We're going to make sure we tap in and keep up to date with things that we learn, sharing information. So as soon as Liz gets her IG up and running, I'm going to make sure I share that as well. If you are starting to come up with some questions, now would be a good time to start dropping those in the chat. We're going to continue on with this interview. I know she has a couple of slides here that she wanted to share with us. So if you wanted to go through those, we can go through some of those, or I can just keep
Mhm.
asking questions, whatever, however you want to proceed. You probably covered some of the stuff from the slides already, huh?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you can pull the slides up, and then if you want to answer questions, take like pause from it. We can do that. And the slides is really just so like afterwards, you guys who are joining in, hopefully Lady Fresh could provide it like the PDF version. So if you guys want to take something from this, you'll have it. So that's why I
Yes.
created these slides.
I love these slides. I'm a lot like you, Liz. I'm a visual person. I learn a lot
Hmm.
more visually. I don't know why. It's just you can tell me something a million times, but if I see it, I'm a lot it's a lot easier for me to retain it.
Hmm.
Um all right. So have you seen a lot of progress with art therapy?
Um, yeah. So both in working with the individual and in groups, right? Because you have to take into account like group dynamics. If you guys ever heard the term, it's just like um, learning how people within a group interact, and it comes up uh, in hand comes with like awareness. So it's to be self-aware, right, and then to be aware of everyone else in the group, right? So if you're talking about like with artwork, for example, everyone has like their individual work that they're working on. But at the end, at the end of all sessions, there's a time where we break out and everyone's sharing, right? So some people initially, when you first join a group, they might not want to share, and over time, you'll start to see people get comfortable and start sharing. A lot of people in art, they think that you have to be like Picasso or it needs to look a certain way. That is not the purpose of doing art and creating art, especially in the art therapy environment. It is supposed to be healing, right? And there is a directive. So sometimes there's like some groups with open studio where you can use any materials and just you know, create artwork from free expression, or there's we have directives where there's like a topic, and you would create art based on that with certain materials. But overall, it's supposed to be healing, and if you feel comfortable, you can share it with everyone. So it's just to be self-aware and learning, basically like teaching people to um, be like socially comfortable in speaking about how they're feeling and being and becoming more expressive.
I love
Um, yeah.
I love that. It's a safe space. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's a safe space and it's different from the traditional, everything has to be verbal. You know what I mean? The creative expression, I feel like that's so important and it's very underrated. And I actually want to, you know, go into that discussion because that's kind of what triggered me to want to discuss art therapy. And I have every intention of getting you back on the show to discuss art therapy and how it applies to so many different aspects in life. We can mention it here today, but it can actually help so
Hmm.
many different parts of life for children and adults.
Yep.
You and I were having a discussion, and we talked about what you did for a living. and how you're highly educated in this field of art therapy and how you're of service to so many people in need. And we started to kind of hone in specifically on autistic people and children and being in the public schools. Why do you think it is that um, a lot of people have never even heard of art therapy? They heard of the arts, they
Hmm.
know it's in schools, but art therapy as a form of treatment and management, why do you think a lot of people aren't aware of this?
There's a few answers to that. One is art therapy is actually still a growing field, and a growing profession. So a lot of people, they don't know about it. They just know about like social work or like a mental health counselor. So the creative arts therapies is like a new field that is growing. But you can what's happening is that also it depends on state to state, the licensing, and noticing it and acknowledging the creative arts therapies as a mental health field and a profession. A lot of people don't respect it, or they just think like, oh, that's art. I can put art in my sessions, right? So like there's a misconception or misclassification of what the creative arts is. Some people, they misclassify the creative arts as like recreation therapy. And while creative arts therapists can do recreation therapy, it is a mental health profession, right? Recreation therapists, um, I think that their goal is to like manage like extracurricular activities like at like community centers and whatnot. And art therapists can do that, but we are psychotherapists, we are social workers, but we also have the addition of nonverbal communication, and we are licensed and trained to be able to recognize certain behaviors, certain materials, certain techniques, certain assessments to help someone to be able to, be more expressive and aware and heal from different things with it through a creative means. So it's just getting people on that route and like that understanding that it is a mental health profession. You need to be licensed and trained. You can't just throw it into something and diminish it. So it's like different aspects of that.
Right. And you, when you and I had this discussion, I had a little bit of outrage because when you broke it down to me, the way that you're breaking it down for everyone today, it sounds just as vital as any other
Hmm.
type of psychotherapy or therapy that's utilized to help people in the mental health you know, spectrums. It
Hmm.
sounds crucial, it sounds vital. And you mentioned something very important, which is that the arts, it's not respected. And I think sometimes it's not respected overall, even not just in therapy, but specifically within therapy. They look at it like extracurricular, or they can just do it themselves, or they can give their kid a piece of paper and let them draw. That's not art therapy. That you need an actual therapist to kind of help guide you through how to do this properly. And there's a
Hmm.
structure in which I've learned through this series, part 1 and part 2, um,
Hmm.
that people on the autistic spectrum, they need structure. Like, they like to have a routine. They may
Hmm.
have not started that way, but things like psychotherapy and art therapy by licensed professionals aid in that. Um, so the fact that the arts aren't respected, like, to me, that's crazy. So how
Hmm.
do you, being that it's not looked at the same as other types of mental health therapy, how do you get your work?
So for me, my experience has been at in clinical settings that are welcome, and they really acknowledge and know that the creative arts therapy does help um, with like certain populations. So like I said, like when I worked with the toddlers, it was a day treatment school. So it was a treatment school where if your children might be on the autism spectrum, they might have behavioral concerns, they might have intellectual disabilities. There was a school specifically for that, so they know that occupational therapists, dance therapists, music therapists, art therapists, in order for children to develop, right, they go through those creative processes and nonverbal communication, in order to help them develop the skills that they need. So it is recognized, at like treatment facilities, that the creative therapies is a vital part of, like a treatment, um, for the emotional healing, skill development, and just expression for a lot of populations. Um, and I think what's hard is that it's narrowed down to like these little areas or like facilities, but there's a general public that needs it. It's not just people who have like intellectual disabilities or who might be on the spectrum. Anybody can benefit from it. And it's kind of hard to like share that if it's only seen beneficial in these small groups.
Mm.
So like with the adults, I worked in a recovery oriented clinical setting, right? So they know that we need an art therapist, we need a drama therapist and music therapist, right? But when you go to like other, facilities, it's not seen because maybe psychotherapy is the way, social work, but that's just not it. That's not the only thing, right? So
Right.
I think now because it's a growing field, and that's because more and more people are learning about it. However, they learn about it, maybe it's like instances like this, or they come across someone that they know who is receiving, and it's like, oh, you know what? No, my child does this, and they hang out. This might be beneficial for them. But the thing is, if that happens, they might not have like environment or facility to support that. In addition to um, health insurance, it's hard
And
to
there it
try.
is.
It's hard to
Yeah.
try and seek services for creative arts therapies because health insurance, they do not recognize the creative arts therapy as a mental health service. So a lot of the times, private practitioners and private practice, um, is self pay, and so while
Right.
some people who have the funds, they're able to self pay, they can receive it. But and the reason why I wanted to get into art therapy is because I'm from Harlem, everybody, and I
Ooh, Harlem
I
girl.
am. Let's go. I enjoy working and I want to give back to a community where I came from, so underserved communities. However, unless it's like those specific groups, like I said, like the treatment centers, like if they have like Medicaid or like whatnot, there's certain programs that I think fits under it, but I don't understand the billing completely. But to bill to receive like a creative arts service is not through creative arts; it's through something else. So that's why it's also very hard to seek the services because health insurance doesn't see creative arts therapy as a service. It has to be given through another name, which doesn't help because it is vital. It's just important as whatever that title that creative arts therapy is given under is just as important.
And
And
that's
there's a
exactly what I wanted you to mention, the fact that health insurance doesn't cover art therapy, y'all. It's therapy. It's necessary, it's needed. So what ends up happening is our underserved communities aren't receiving a very vital and beneficial resource to aid in whatever it may be that it's needed for because insurance doesn't cover it. It has to be self-pay. And these art therapists um such as Liz, you know, they have this passion, they have this desire to give back to their own community by providing this service, but yet they're not recognized as the therapist that is a psychotherapist, and they have pretty much the same training. They have the master degrees, they have all of these things, but you have to pay out of pocket because they don't recognize the arts as a true treatment for or a way to help aid with mental health. I think that's a horrible and terrible misuse of your services. And that was a huge reason why I needed you to do this show, because there's so many people who never even heard of art therapy,
Mm-hmm.
never heard of it. And now that we're finding out that it's something that can be so beneficial, half of the people that are listening may not ever be able to utilize that resource unless they can pay for it out of pocket. That's a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah, and I didn't get to watch the whole show of the last one with the parents, but I know that it was a struggle to like find a school for like a child who was just diagnosed, right? So there are like certain spots and whatnot. Like, you know, there's a maximum amount of students that you can have in a school or like a treatment center. But I believe that um, if it was if insurance took it, right, they can see someone outside of a school. They don't have to go to a school in order to do it, you know? Um, so that's like a main struggle right now. And I feel for the parent who can't get their child the help that they need because there's a certain school, like I said, that subgroup, like those little groups where it seemed beneficial, right? And the fact that her child has to wait, that means that there's a great need for these services. So um, it's not enough to have it in those little groups or schools, right? It needs to
Absolutely.
be able for private practice. It needs to be accessible to insurance because a lot of people they might not be able to pay out of pocket. So there's a whole group of people who's not getting the services that they need in order to be successful in society and to help them progress how they need to.
Absolutely. I wanted to take a minute, and I do apologize because I did not acknowledge my chat in the beginning. I promise I will do that. But I needed to give a special shout out to Jen Slayton. She was our
Yes.
clinical licensed, yes, psychotherapist that did our first episode on our autism series. And she says that the arts are usually the first thing that gets cut in schools too. So that's why I was saying it's not just within the mental health arena that the arts aren't respected. It's even in schools. I know when I was growing up, and my daughter, she does have it. But I think it's because of the area that we live in, honestly, that it's still included. But we had music, we had art, like drawing art, we had dance classes, we had all of that was built into our curriculum. And nowadays I see that some schools don't have, let alone all of those, and so I think that that's a huge issue to remove that from schools, because sometimes these kids need an escape from just writing, reading, writing, arithmetics all day. It's beneficial to the brain, to create something and express yourself by other means. I know dance saved me. It kept me from being in the streets doing stuff I didn't have no business doing, because after school I was able to dance. I was able to participate in shows. We used to do plays and stuff and display our artwork and everything for our parents. I couldn't tell you the last time I've been to a school and got to watch my kids perform somewhere because they learned a drama piece.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to be cut in schools and then not recognized on the mental health level, that it really does suck. But you're to be commended, because I think the fact that you went into a field with all the education that you have, that you really have to build yourself up, decide if you're going to, do a private practice, but you still got to create the buzz. You got to get the
Mm-hmm.
clientele. It's a lot to it. It sounds like it, at least, it's a business.
Oh
You have to run.
yes, it is.
Yeah. Um, how rewarding is it for you?
Oh man, it's challenging, right? And nothing is easy, right? As a therapist, number one, right? You have like different personalities, different things you have to deal with. But over time, like for me, like I'm not the type of I love like the process of things. And that's what's important about art therapy. It's about the process. It's not about the product, right? So although I say that not to say that we don't have goals, because right, every you work toward a goal, but it's not solely about that goal, just like A and B, right? It's about the process,
Mm,
what happens, the development, the character development,
the
right? We see
collective.
this in shows, we see this in plays, right? What builds upon the character? What skills can you gain? And it's amazing to see someone progress from like very difficult struggling and you just like being patient and persistent and consistent. And over time, like it is rewarding. Like if you work toward a goal, you might have to you try it this way, it doesn't work. Oh, I'm okay, I noticed that, right? You have to be very observant, and just take your time, trust the process, believe in the process, because over time it will happen. And I definitely heard that in the last episode with the doctor, Dr. Hasada and Miss Callie, is that like, with the doctor and her son, is like over time she tried all these different remedies, but it was the process. And I know you can appreciate the process that you go through, because even the challenges that we have as individuals, if you're going through something challenging now and then you succeed, you're like, oh my gosh, I appreciate that I went through this, and this, because this is where it got me. And it's the same thing when you work with clients. It's like, okay, like this person was a real struggle, right? Or like this was very challenging, but now, recognize your progress and acknowledge it. So it is rewarding. I love that part about just working with people.
Yeah, you definitely gotta like working with people because it's every experience
You
I
do.
can. It's not easy. I listen as a parent. It's not it's not easy dealing with your own children. But when you're dealing with children that may have any kind of issues going on, I'm sure it's a learning curve too for the parents. I'm gonna assume that parents have a lot of questions in the beginning, wanting to know exactly how this can help their child. So would you be able to tell us kind of like what a conversation like that um, would be like? Because I'm assuming a lot of therapists, psychotherapists or other type of therapists bring you guys in.
Hmm.
So what kind of conversation do you have with parents like during intake or first meeting or consultation um as far as like managing expectations and what to expect from your service?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, because it varies depending on what people like the abilities. So everybody has like different concerns, different goals, right? So like I was saying before, is to get as much information as possible. So like the reason why you're seeking therapy, what are the main concerns right now? What is the goal? Like just life skills. Like what are the essential life skills that they are struggling with and they need help with, right? Those are some of the things that we need to know, and that's how we formulate our treatment plans. And then from there, it's an ongoing conversation, right? So you have to constantly collaborate with the parent. It's like, okay, we started doing this in therapy. If it's kind of like giving homework in a way, but it's creative homework. It's engaging homework, and the parent has to be well, it's more helpful if the parent is engaged and does things that the therapist suggests, because what the child does at home or what the child does at therapy, if they do it in both environments, it'll help progress, um, help them progress to reach the goal or develop the skills that they need. So it's really just like understanding where the client comes from, what they're capable of doing, and what their main concerns is, in an ongoing conversation to help them reach a certain goal.
It takes a community.
Hmm.
It takes a village. Basically, you need that support, communication. I really, honestly, I'm amazed at what you do. Sitting there when I was talking to you, I was in awe, and like the wheels started turning. Like, yo, I really need to do something with this. And then just like the um the outrage of how you explained about the arts not being respected. I wasn't familiar with art therapy until we had that conversation, first of all.
Mm.
And I was so amazed with what you do that I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. She should be killer at this." And, I'm sure that she's probably getting calls left and right, and you probably still do. However, I feel like it's almost unfair. Whenever we want to do something that pours into ourselves and pours into our community, it seems like it's always a way to undercut it, no matter what
Mhm.
it is. You know what I mean? They don't it's and I'm hoping that changes. You know, I'm hoping that at some point you guys um are recognized the way that you deserve to be recognized, because I can only imagine nothing but good can come from this.
Mhm.
Has your experience with parents been like, "Oh my god, I see such a huge difference. You know, this really has been a game changer for him. He's communicating more, or, you know, he's calm more." Like, what have been some of the feedback that you've gotten?
Feedback from parents, feedback from teachers, feedback from like staff. It's like the whole community, right? Because a child isn't just seen by like the therapist and the parent, it's interaction, right? So a lot of the goals for anyone who's getting therapy, a lot of it is because they have issues or trouble or struggles interacting with the environment and people, or being self-expressive, right? Or recognizing certain things. So yeah, definitely. Like I said, with the toddler, I think he was 3 at the time, 3, 4. From not making eye contact to coming in the room directly looking at me,
Mhm.
saying my name, like I was so happy, you know? Like, and that was me. I only saw him like once a week. So imagine if he's doing this with me, like at home and in class, you can see he's starting to like share with like some of his classmates, you know, like looking, turning, right? Because at first it's just like not making eye contact. Maybe he's just busy with whatever's in front of him, but now they're like more self-aware of their environment. So it is lovely to see after like it is hard work. So I'm going to say after all the hard work and the persistence that's put in, um, think parents they just they want their child to be successful. So whatever it is, if they can do anything, always voice that and communicate. And everything like their feedback, their questions, their concerns is always welcome. So it wasn't like no, they're parent teachers. This is our only conversation. It was just like if they came to the school, or like they could email or phone call or something. Like it was just a consistent like back and forth.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
So I know it's you have to, and you guys, please, I'm not getting my questions now. I'm used to y'all flooding the chat with questions, so I know y'all got to have some questions for Liz. Go ahead and drop them in the chat. I dropped the link. If Miss Jen wanted to come up and add anything, I would love to have both of my therapists here. If she had anything else she wanted to add, or if you guys have any questions for Liz, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We are almost done with our show, so I don't want to leave any stone unturned. If you have questions, now is the time to drop them in the chat. Now I wanted to ask you, and I kind of lost my train of thought trying to get everybody to ask their questions. um I totally lost my train my train of thought. Let me see. So we talked about families, support. Um, we talked about the progress. As far as finding resources, because I know you have to be licensed to actually, you know, aid people. You work in New
Hmm.
York, so that's where you practice. Now, as far as people who might want to look up resources that could help their autistic child at home.
Hmm.
Even if it's like, things they can do at home or resources to find an art therapist.
Hmm.
What would be your recommendations for people who, are outside of New York? Because we're gonna tell them to come to Liz if they're in New York. But
All
if they're
right.
outside
So
New York, what would they do?
so if you could pull the slides up because I have some things there that I want to point out and highlight. So right here, so I just want to go over like best practices. So some things based on like studies to note and be mindful of. This is right on the internet. I try my best to put things in that you guys can go and look at for yourself. It is an organization that works with autistic population. And they just highlight that some of the best practices in working with individuals with autism is to have a routine. So in their practice, at the beginning of each session, there's some structure to support like the having a routine, and I've done that as well. You have to be very you have to communicate the whole time, like no matter what it is, even if you think they're not listening, you have to voice what it is they're doing. It's like, okay, like now it's time for this. We're going to do this. Oh, it's time, and you have to be enthusiastic. You don't want to be like overly directive. You don't say, okay, like go and do this. You have to like try and get them to engage, encourage them to make a move, and if they don't, then you can help model that for them and help them. And you just want to give instructions by helping them do things. And then eventually over time, just encourage them to do it themselves. So a part of that comes with just like routines, transitioning, being very clear with that. I mentioned transitions. So someone is having a meltdown, right? Maybe a child, they really enjoy something that you were doing. And unless you have a routine to transition, they're going to have a meltdown, right?
Mm.
So I was, if we're going back to the first session with Jen and the question about the school bus, right? Um, I had posted a question on behalf of my sister-in-law who is a school bus driver, and she told me like after conversation, it was just like I noticed he only has a meltdown when the bus stops or parks. So I was like, oh my gosh, like that's good information. He's not just like screaming for nothing or like a meltdown for nothing. It's probably because he's enjoying that car that ride, and when the bus abruptly stops, that's a disruption in his joy. And unless there's a transition or support to help him become aware of that and develop some coping skill during that time, you're going to see a meltdown, right? So it's just like noticing certain things, having a routine. And if you notice like a transition where there's a behavioral concern, you got to work on it and like figure out some type of support to help the child in that moment.
Okay, that's very good information to know.
Hmm.
So I got a
Um,
couple
yeah.
questions coming in. Did you have something
Oh,
else to add before I start?
I mean, I can take some questions and then go to the next one afterward.
Okay. So Lotus asked, what was her first experience she remembers that was the most challenging and made her rethink her career choice if she has had any of those experiences? That's a
That
good
is a
question,
good
Lotus.
question. Um, oh man, okay. There is a term. Why am I forgetting it? Um, oh my gosh, there's a term. So basically, as a new therapist or imposter syndrome, I think a
Say it
lot of
again.
people imposter syndrome.
Got it. Okay.
So, and I'll speak for myself, but maybe somebody might relate to this. It's like when you're new in a certain situation, and it can be very overwhelming. And sometimes you think like, oh my gosh, why am I here? Like I'm not smart enough. Like I don't know all these things. That happens. Like
Mm,
you feel like you don't know anything. You feel
you don't
like
belong.
because you're thrown into a certain situation, you don't yet have the answer for it, that you're a bad therapist or you're a bad person. Right? This has happened because like maybe you had a plan, right? I had a plan or I had a type of routine, but something happened and I didn't know how to manage it, and that can be very overwhelming. But it comes with experience, right? So yes, I don't remember a particular experience, just to answer your question, but it comes and goes. Especially when I first got into art therapy and took my first job, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working with adults. How do I do this? And me, people still think I'm like 19, 20. I'm only 5'3". I'm not in my 20s. A lot of people still think I'm in my 20s, and I get misjudged. So it's just like oh my gosh, like, should I even be in this environment? Because people are not even respecting me just how my appearance, right? So then when I start to speak and I have to do like this type of work with them, are they going to even respect me?
I've
So it's like
experienced that myself.
stuff like
And
that.
I think that happens especially a lot amongst minorities. Um, I feel like that happens a lot with women. I can only speak from a minority woman, but I feel like it happens a lot because sometimes you feel like, dang, do I know enough to be in this room? Like, especially if it's new. If it's new, I know when I first got into hair transplant surgeries,
Hmm.
I'm working with patients who have to walk around with their heads looking like this forever. And so in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, what if they ask me a question and I have to start fumbling around and answer? You basically start doubting yourself, as if maybe you shouldn't even be doing this.
Hmm.
But I think, and the advice that I could give to you with that is the longer you're doing it, the more comfortable you're going to be. And you will still feel that every now and again. When I pick up a
Hmm.
new client, a new doctor's office that I'm working for, I'm like, okay, I'll text Fresh and be like, "Oh my god, I'm very nervous. I don't know why I'm so nervous about this new doctor's office." He'd be like, "Girl, if you don't stop, everything. Stop doubting yourself. You're going to be okay." And I need that. Like sometimes you kind of need that little bit of reassurance that you're going to be good. So I think you'll feel that less and less the more and more that you're doing it. But I think it's awesome that you made mention of that. You didn't necessarily
Hmm.
have one experience that made you feel like that, but it was the
Yeah.
self-doubt. And I didn't know it was a name for it.
Hmm. Imposter
It's an
syndrome.
imposter syndrome. So you think of yourself as the imposter.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, now
Yep.
I know. Now I can tell Fresh the next time I text him, I got imposter syndrome, bruh.
Yeah, that's a good question. I see a question in the chat. How would you handle a conversation with a parent who
I
doesn't
think that one's
know,
probably a little lower down. I
who's
didn't get
unaware that their child is on a spectrum? Um, that's a good question. Um, I mean, my thought is going is, are you a professional like a teacher? And if so, I just like the easy answer is the longer you are with a child, or especially in a group environment, there might be certain traits or characteristics or like behavioral patterns that you recognize. If you do notice that they follow a certain pattern that might be identified as someone who's on the spectrum, um, to navigate a conversation with someone who might not be open to that conversation, that is a struggle, right? But you can start off just like, hey, like I noticed that so and so isn't able to or struggles with this. Have you thought of doing this, or have you spoke to the doctor about this or something? Because there is developmental milestones that everybody at a certain age should hit, or in grade levels or social skills or whatever skills it is. And if you notice that a child is behind in that, then you can recommend or like send referrals, like resources, like, hey, I noticed this. If you take a look at this, this might be beneficial. So, um,
all right.
and I,
Hopefully that answered your question.
yeah.
Yeah. I suspect that I'm related to that person that asked that question. Um, Rich Martinez asked Lady Fresh, please ask her what she feels about kids being homeschooled versus building schooled with autism. So home versus being on site.
Just like education.
Yeah, I guess as it. What are your thoughts on a child with autism being schooled at home versus being schooled in a normal school setting?
Nothing wrong with it, right? Because maybe like being one-on-one might help a child like develop certain skills before they go into environment, because it is easier, just like in typical development, right? Yeah, maybe children are expected to know a certain amount of things or develop skills and one thing before they go to school. It's the same thing, right? Maybe if a child needs more support and stuff, if you can be very hands on, that's very important. So if a child is at home, you need to be have like a strict routine, understand transitions, like helping them adapt to things and introducing things that they might come across in an environment with other kids. You can be super hands-on and plan something and do things that helps them with that. Nothing wrong with that. However, because a lot of people with autism, they struggle socially, that it's very important that they need to be in a social environment. So there's nothing wrong with being homeschooled unless they're like around other kids who like in a small group, but it's not enough for them to just be individual all the time. Maybe if
Mm.
there's like an after school, like maybe if they're homeschooled, fine, but they have some type of after school curricular activity that they are going to be and socialize around other kids. Because that's just our nature. Like you have to be around people
Around.
in the world, you know?
Well, would you say that something like the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, do you think that that may have caused a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Being that they need a system and they need a structured way of doing things. If we've
Hmm.
gotten them on the pattern of getting up, going to school every day, working with these teachers, riding the school bus, we've got them acclimated to this lifestyle going to school. That's their routine and their pattern. Do you think something
Hmm.
like the pandemic could have kind of threw a monkey wrench into that
To
whole thing?
disrupt it, yes,
Yes, kinda
because
just everything shut down.
that's adaptability. I mean, for me, I mean, I did teletherapy and, us day to day, we have a routine to get up, shower, brush your teeth, go to work. And they're like, once I wasn't doing that, I didn't know what to do. I
Yeah,
started doing my own artwork to cope, to be honest. I have a whole notebook that I could show you guys in like another session, like another form of art therapy for just like personal healing and awareness. Like I started doing that because I was like, oh my gosh, I need to reflect and like
mhm.
plan a new. So yes, it was disruptive, especially like you get used to something and then now, like it's taken away. You gotta adapt. It's hard for a lot of us to adapt to
It was
something
hard for
thrown
adults.
thrown in our way. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, I never even I never even thought about that. That was a rough year. So I can only imagine if you already had, you if you're a person that's accustomed to a routine, like that had to disrupt a lot of things for a lot of people, and then dealing with people on the spectrum, it
Hmm.
probably was even harder dealing with that adaptability. But hopefully, if they were receiving services through a wonderful art therapist like you, they would be able to, maneuver through things like adapting. So
And
that's
one
why
thing, it's hard to do art therapy through teletherapy unless the person is very independent and can get all the materials, or if there's a parent that would be in session to help provide that. So yes, if someone was receiving art therapy and then couldn't go in person for that in-person interaction, yes, that can be very disruptive too.
let's take another question. This one's coming from our very own Jen Slayton. She says, do you have some examples, kids or adults, expressing through art therapy what they can't verbalize?
um yes. So let's see. I'm thinking of a client. I'm going to stick to the topic, a client who's on a spectrum. And I mentioned this just like with decision making. A part of his goal was to help him with decision making. Like
Mm,
there would be a directive, right? So I would give like a topic for the group to do. And he was like, oh, I don't know. Should I do this or should I do that? It was very hard for him to just choose to do something. So in the group, there was a lot of just like individual attention for him to help him decide what to do. Eventually, by like going back and forth and just realizing what he enjoyed or like what his thought process was, or help him articulate that, because I also saw him individually. So like that individual time definitely helped me in groups so that it didn't disrupt the group, because he would, be very verbal, just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And like that would throw some people off or annoy them, whatever it might be. But eventually he would just have voice saying, oh, you know what? Because we did this together, I think I'm just going to choose this because I like this color or something. Like maybe there was a color that we used often in our individual sessions, and in the group setting, he was able to improve on his decision making. And I saw it in other groups because the other therapists on like different groups. So the adults, they would attend different groups throughout the day, kind of like middle school, how you go to different classes. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the other instructors would be like, oh, you know what? I noticed that this person is making better decisions or answering quicker. Um, or just like to share artwork, right? And being expressive that way. Like maybe just like a directive, like, oh, I don't know. It's like, you know what? You don't have to know, just put something on the paper and then, just share what it is. And sometimes with them just showing, you can kind of help them articulate, just like, oh, I see this. It seems like this. And sometimes they might agree, they might not, but that helps them to understand what they put on paper. So that's a good
That
question.
was a really good. I was gonna say that was a really good question, and um something I think we needed to know, because that's kind of a good visualization of what art therapy can do, for a child that may be nonverbal. Like, it encouraged him to express himself verbally at some point, because he was accustomed to that routine of drawing or music or whatever it may be. Now he can express it. So I love that.
Hmm.
There was one other question I saw from Paige Hall, and it says, "Hey Liz, could art therapy still be impactful through virtual sessions, or would you recommend in-person sessions instead?"
Hi, Paige. I know Paige is. Good question. I had mentioned that like during the pandemic, it was hard to like transition from like in person. It's possible to be impactful during virtual sessions. So like part of like a lot of things in the content, why my IG isn't live right now, why my website isn't live, is because I noticed that during the pandemic, I was thrown off. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to support my clients because everything was in person on paper, right? It was physical. So I had to figure out how can I help support them through a digital means. So yes, it can be impactful if the person is familiar or likes to use like digital stuff. So like whiteboards, like there's a like Google Jamboard, like that's way to create like collages. There's ways to like use like markers and highlighters to like make artwork. You can like import shapes, right? So even though you can't draw it physically, if they don't have the materials, you can use like a digital means to help, right? In person, I would say it's always best, right? Because that's our nature, is to be interactive in person, and you can help support someone better being in person. But it varies. It depends on the person and how they are, and if they have the support at home from others. If it's a child, if they have that support from their parent to help them, then it can be just as impactful and beneficial as if they were in the session with me.
That was a really good question as well. Pamela J asked, "Do you find sibling involvement in the art projects helpful or distracting?"
It depends on the relationship. um, if there is like a concern with like siblings, or like you know, they argue and whatnot, that dynamic. So I mentioned group dynamics. Also, like two people, right? Two siblings. That's a dynamic. So you have to understand how each one of them are individually and help them adapt and adjust to be empathetic toward each other. So there's like some art projects where you can work on together, right? And I've done this in groups, just so like people just like, oh, your partner next to you, you're gonna work together. So it really depends. It can be helpful if they're working toward a goal and they know. It can be distracting if like there's one sibling or one person that doesn't take any regard to what the other person is doing. Um, but if that's a goal for them to work on that, then we just gotta go with the flow and work with those challenges until they improve.
Have you worked with siblings often?
No.
No.
But so that's a good question. Because I've heard like stories or like when in the clinical setting we have like group supervision. So there's people that work with families and whatnot. My experience has been just in group settings with like 8 to 12 participants and then individuals. So that's been my experience. But I can answer that based on my peers and their experiences and
Okay.
in my approach if I was to work with siblings based on that.
Wow. I feel like you've given us such a wealth of information and knowledge on things that we um I mean, I went from not knowing anything about art therapy to getting a pretty good understanding on how it works amongst the arts,
Hmm.
autistic community. Um Again, I have every intention of having you back on the show so that you can talk about other ways that art therapy helps with other things. But
Hmm.
briefly, can you tell us some of the other maybe neurodiverse um, situations or things that people are going through? What other types of what can art therapy also be used for away from just someone that's on the autism spectrum?
Hmm. All right, so I'm going to ask you to go back to those slides because I have something
Yes,
that I want
ma'am.
to piggyback off to help answer that
Am I
question.
going forward or back?
Yeah, you can go for it. This, I just want to say, this is the check-in that I said like to have a routine. I sung a song with my groups, like the little kids, and it was like, "Hello,
You can
Fresh,
sing
hello,
it. You can
Fresh,
sing.
hello, and how are you?" And that encourages like them to like point and the goal is to have them express how they're feeling in that moment. So, like when you go into a classroom, it's good if your teacher's like, "How's everybody feeling?" Right? You don't just want to go into activity or work without a check-in. So, I threw that in there so if you guys can, be mindful of stuff like that.
Okay.
And then this resource is if you guys want to explore like some things you can do at home. The Montessori book is for babies and toddlers. So it's really just like it lays out the developmental stages of like where a child is developmentally and like some activities that you can do at home in order to help support that development. So I would encourage this. This is right on Amazon. There's the link. But if you go to the next slide, and you see my cats here, I told you there's going to be cats. How to find a creative arts therapist. So I wanted to go into that. Actually, if you go back, I believe there's a slide before one more. Nope, one more back. Okay, so
Oh,
I
that one?
have yeah,
That
this
one?
one. Sorry. So there's this is for specifically for children with autism, like to help enhance communication through expression. Um, it's not specific to children with autism. That's the same thing for like a lot of kids who might be very introverted. They don't maybe there's like a traumatic experience that they had, right? So a lot of art therapists, whenever there's a crisis, a lot of art therapists are called to help because like if someone and experiences trauma, it's hard to express and process that trauma. So it enhances the communication through a nonverbal creative means, right? To improve imagination, greater thinking, relationship building, right? So if there's a child who's not socializing, it's to help with that, um, to help gain certain coping skills. So like sensory motor things like hand-eye coordination, some children or people they might be tactile defensive. That just means that there's like certain materials that they're very sensitive to. Um, so there would be like certain materials that you would introduce to help them adapt and learn how to cope with certain textures, even food. That
Mm.
works too. Um, Enhanced spatial and like visual awareness, or just like being aware of your environment, just doing activities that helps people become aware of that, and just emotional regulation, right? So that's this is what's going to help people behave in a certain manner so that they're able to socially engage, so they're able to like maybe go take a walk if they need to instead of just like having a meltdown. Um, and to further elaborate on that, like there's different things that art therapy can be used for. It can be used for grief, so there's grief art therapy. I've worked with a client to help her process grief. You can use art therapy in, like I said, traumatic situations. So like after like hurricanes or like, super traumatic things that just turn someone's whole life around, art therapists are called for those things. And it's not in the media, but they are. Um, what else? It 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 really depends. Like if there's someone who gravitates to art or the creative arts, whether it's dance, drama, anything, it can just help. Just like with emotional healing, it can help with people who might be so in pediatric settings and hospital settings, um, with adults who are like in palliative care, pediatric settings like in cancer, so like pain management, dealing with existential therapy, so like people who might be on the verge of like death or like they are diagnosed with like um, something where they're struggling to deal with a diagnosis that they got, just to help manage that, right? So there's a whole range of things. It really depends on the person, what their abilities are, like what they can do, like if they can move and they gravitate to dance, maybe that's one way to help them. But art therapy can definitely be used for like grief, for emotional wellness, pain management, um, you name it. If you got a question, you can ask about it. It's possible.
I need an art therapist. I came to terms with that just in our conversation. I was like, I could probably utilize a health a art therapist to just it like I said, you can use it for so many different things in life, you
Hmm.
know, grief. You mentioned, if you have trouble with a diagnosis, if just so many different things, but yet it's not respected amongst. I'm not gonna go back to that. But it
Hmm.
just really that bothers me. But I really love what you're doing. Um, is your goal to eventually start a private practice?
Yes, I would like to. I would like to. Right now, I'm not a registered art therapist, which I can be. I just need to submit some references and a payment because all
Yep.
those things, you learn about that after you do the schooling. I have my license, so I can work with people in New York State. But once I become a registered art therapist, it'll open my horizons to work with like people out of state, depending on like state regulations. But I can work with other people outside of New York State. And on the last slide, I don't know if we want to go to it, but like if you're going to provide this for everyone who's here,
Mhm.
you can also find an art therapist through the American Art Therapy Association, and the Art Therapy Credentials Board. So, American Art Therapy Association, that's where like a lot of art therapists, they go to conferences. We do continuing education credits. So just like any other mental health professional, how they have to go to different workshops and conferences in order to maintain their license. Creative arts therapists, we have our own conference and do the same thing. And the Art Therapy Credentials Board is like where you can find a registered art therapist in different areas and states. So if you go to the website, there's if you like search like art therapist, like locator or find a art therapist, it will show you a map, and there's going to be dots from all over the U.S. You can click on them. You do have to contact whoever the person is for a consultation. But it shows you what people specialize in. So you can click and see like, okay, I'm looking for someone who specializes in autism spectrum disorder, right? So um, you can find people that way. But you can also Google art therapists in your area because honestly, there's more people who do have a private practice. And like you said, Fresh, it's a Lady Fresh. There's a it's a business, right? So people are marketing and they're putting it out there. They're able to do art therapy under like different like mental health counselor. Unfortunately, sometimes it's under different titles. But if you just Google art therapists in your area, it might be self-pay. Have to be honest because again, insurance isn't accepted unless it's through like schools. Um, but yeah, you can just Google it or go to one or both of those resources.
Well, you guys heard what she had to say. Liz, I appreciate you so much for doing this show and inspiring the show. There
You're
were
very
several different
welcome.
reasons that I wanted to cover this. Autism has touched my family. It's touched my friends. And I think that it's important for us to dialogue and find a way to educate ourselves on so many different facets, not just, oh, it's Autism Awareness Month. Well, what are we going to learn? You know what I mean? How can we now not stand in judgment of what we don't understand? And so
Hmm.
I think that, and that's just my thought. We were successful at being able to do some of that over the course of these 3 episodes. Jen set us off with the diagnosis. Emmy and Callie gave us personal testimony, which I think is so important when we're covering any topic, is to hear from people who are experienced the journey. Now, they did experience it as parents. And we're still working on getting that firsthand perspective. But it's something about being able to connect with people on a personal level that I feel is refreshing and that makes platforms like this stand out a little bit more than just, looking something up and having somebody dictate some information to you. Being able to ask the questions and get real live answers. I think it's super important, and I'm really grateful um to you and my sister for kind of encouraging this dialogue. So I'm gonna tell you this though. It is so weird to hear you call me Lady Fresh.
Oh,
What do you normally call me?
Auntie Tia, but I didn't know it was for the show. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
if you
for
want me to say
those of
Auntie
you
Tia, I'm
who
gonna say
don't
Auntie
know, for those of you who don't know, this lovely young lady is married to my nephew, so this is my niece. I am very proud of her. I am so grateful for her expertise. I am grateful for her advice. I'm grateful for, the love that she has for my family, for my nephew. She's just been an amazing addition to our family. It's like she's always been there forever. So, I have a extra special little bit of love for this guest today because this is my kinfolk. She from Harlem. That's my baby. So, you guys, I hope you took away from this something. I hope that this series was it meant something to you guys. And so if it did, do me a favor, go ahead and give me a couple of colorful hearts in the chat. Let me see some blue and red and yellow. Drop a couple of hearts in the chat. I see some already, but give me some of those colors. We got a lot of colors in our autism awareness, infinity sign. Go ahead and drop some of those colors in the chat. We're gonna get ready to wrap up. Again, thank you so much for coming, but we got to play a game, right?
Ooh, let's go.
Ooh. So normally I do this or that, but I'm not going to do this or that today. I'm going to give you a word, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that word. Okay, first thing.
Okay.
Don't be trying to think all day. Just whatever comes to
All
mind.
right.
Okay.
Throw
All
me
right.
off guard. Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Children.
Fun?
It took you too
Funny.
long.
Fun? Well,
Fun, funny.
I say funny. Yes, fun, funny.
Okay. Okay. Art,
Creative.
community,
Everybody.
faith,
Spiritual.
love,
Genuine. I don't know.
progress.
Process.
I like that. Family,
Love.
support.
A lot. That's like need a lot of support.
And Harlem.
Woo woo.
Woo-woo!
Bowling. No, I don't know. That's my
Squash.
hometown. Squash.
Mhm.
The sport. If you don't know what squash is, you better Google it.
Now, and last but not least, T. Rose Jr.
My love, my heart, my
And there
husband.
you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much, Elizabeth Rose, for being here. You were amazing. As I expected you to be. You closed out this series exactly how I wanted it to be done. And I thank you so much for agreeing to be here today. It means so much. Promise me this won't be the last time you do the show.
What that for this?
Yeah, I said, promise me this won't be the last time you do the show.
Oh, it's not. I'm telling y'all, I don't have my IG and my website up, but it will be. So if y'all looking forward to that, I will. Once I'm on the show again, hopefully I have that up. I will show y'all my artwork because I do my own personal art therapy. So that's part of like my content that I'm focusing on that I want to share that I think most people should know. Like the reason why I went into psychology and arts because I love art, but like also I have family members who have undiagnosed things. And I was like, you know what? I need to understand behavior and the psychology from it so I can develop the patience and like just know how to manage interacting with people. But in learning that, it's definitely helped me. It's definitely helped how I see, perceive, and interact with people and family. But also, there's so much that we don't know that they don't teach us in our education system that people need to know. I feel like if people understand these concepts, like society would be so much better. People would just be more better personally. So that's part of what I'm working on. So hopefully once I'm back on the show, I'll be able to share that with you guys.
Oh, definitely. I have so many more questions that I have for you, not just about autism, but just your process and just, getting into this and where you would like to go and what you would like to utilize this for. Really quickly, I wanted to remind everyone, you may have originally seen my first banner that I had. My original banner did incorporate the puzzle pieces that most people are aware of, as far as recognizing the symbol or icon for autism. Um, Shortly before I began, and literally, I mean, shortly, maybe 30 minutes before I started my very first live, I changed it. And the reason I changed it was because it was brought to my attention and based on some research that I'd done was that the puzzle pieces were offensive to some people with autism. And I ping pong back and forth whether or not to keep it on the fire or not. It seemed to have been kind of a preference thing based on the research that I did. But when I spoke to the wonderful Jen Slayton shortly before the first episode, she explained to me, the reasons why, some felt it was offensive. And after listening to her, I decided to go ahead and remove the puzzle pieces from my banner. Now, it is still widely used. There are people living with autism that actually still use it. So, this is not to tell anyone that what they're doing is wrong. However, this is the fresh perspective. And so when I receive a perspective about something from someone as declarated as Jen Slayton, When I receive information that can help me grow and do better, I try to incorporate that and I try to be respectful of that. And so, um, it was something new that I learned. And so I replaced all of my puzzle pieces, um, and put the infinity sign, which is multicolored, because it's a little bit more universally accepted. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong for using anything because again, I just learned this 4 or 5 days ago. And so I just didn't want to be offensive to anyone. So I just wanted to let you know why you may have seen the difference in banners. The banners changed like 3 or 4 times, but that is the reason why I have not been putting up puzzle pieces or using it on any of my banners. So please do not apologize for using them. I just learned this just recently, and I just wanted to share the information. But if you want to hear more in-depth explanation for that, make sure you go back and watch part 1 of the series where Jen Slayton actually explains the use of the puzzle pieces and what people that live with autism felt about it. And so why there was an additional symbol or icon that was introduced, which is the ribbon that is multicolored, the infinity sign that's multicolored. And I do believe there's another one that's like a gold infinity sign as well. So, when I learn better, I do better. And so I just wanted to pass that little information on to everybody. That's why I said drop the hearts with multiple colors because I try to be sensitive to everyone. So I learned something. You guys learned something. Yeah. So thank you again to you, Liz. Thank you to Miss Callie. Thank you to Dr. Emmy. Thank you to Jen Slayton. I appreciate all of you ladies for hitting this panel and discussing this topic. Liz, I'm gonna let you go.
All right.
But
Thank you for having me.
again, thank you so much for being here. And don't let this be the last time because I know where you live.
It will not be. I'll be
All
back,
right.
y'all.
All right. Well, have a good night.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye. Jen Slayton, I love her so much. Many autistic adults don't want to be considered as a puzzle. They feel they are neurologically, oh, look, I said it right on the first try, different, not confusing or less than. So there is a brief explanation, but she gives a little bit more detail in part 1. So you have to go back and watch the show so that you can be fully educated as to the puzzle pieces. And again, and I explained to Jen myself, I was like, oh, when I first saw it, I actually thought it was really beautiful. I thought it was a beautiful symbol. I never looked at it, and see, that's why the show is the fresh perspective, because usually someone comes in with a fresh perspective or a new outlook or way, and I'm learning just like you guys are learning. That's why we're doing this. So let me acknowledge my chat because I feel horrible. I don't think I've ever done a show where I didn't acknowledge my chat. I feel terrible. I'm gonna try to scroll back as far as I can and try to get the people that were at the very, very top. Because there were people in and out, and so I just want to make sure I acknowledge as many of you guys as possible. J Town, thank you so much for being here. Kira Love, that's family. Love you. Thank you so much for being here. Lotus Flower Bomb, my boo. Harlem Girl was in the building. Love you, Nisi Poo. Jamie Isom, thank you so much. IBT Mark. Okay, close family friend. I think I know who y'all. Thank you for being here. The nice one, salute to you. T Rose Jr., salute to you. Thank you so much for being here. SJS, thank you so much for being here. Let's see who else is in the chat. I did see Andre Obama don't like me. Andre Obama, thank you so much for being here. ATG TV, stop by. Maybach Sports, thank you so much. Behind the Bar 3.0, epic premiere earlier today. You guys make sure y'all head on over to Behind the Bar 3.0 and check out his content. We on the road to 10K. I told him he could get it in 30 days. I don't think I'm gonna be far off. I think he still can get it. He got little less than 2 weeks, but I think he can get there. He keep pumping out the content he's doing. He definitely can get there. So salute to you, big little bro. Fresh Breezy, my king. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Jin Jin, my love. Thank you. E, salute. Blue Moon Goddess. Hey, beautiful. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're still watching, girl, we still need to talk about Snowfall. You know, the series ended yesterday. I wanted to actually do a live tonight about that. So hit me up and let me know if you still want to do that. Let's see who else. Who else? It was a lot of people that came by. Kid Mary the Goat, thank you so much. Pamela J, thank you so much. And thank you for hitting that Cash App, sis. I appreciate it. And if anybody else want to hit the Cash App, this was a lot of work. And vetting and in doing interviews basically before setting up the interview. Just show a little love or appreciation. Feel free to go ahead and hit that Cash App at hashtag I am Lady Fresh. Never required, but always appreciated. My sis, Miss Callie's Kitchen, was in the building. Thank you so much for hitting the link and talking and telling us your story. Hopefully I'll have you back soon. We got some things in the works. Excuse me, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm a little parched right now. Rich Martinez, thank you so much. I appreciate you for stopping by. My boo. I think I mentioned you already. And to the people that were watching on Twitch, thank you so much. I don't have followers over there like that. I think I might have like one, but I'm trying to build my Twitch up because that's where you're going to start seeing Lady Fresh do most of her music. I'm coming up on my 1 year, so I plan to do a celebration for that. May 7th is my actual 1 year. So I'm trying to decide if we're gonna do a little celebration show. Maybe BDB can help me with that because I'm not good with putting that kind of stuff together. But I would love to celebrate my 1 year. Hopefully I have a prosperous and even better year next year. But as far as all the copyrighted music, we're going to be moving over to Twitch. I've been learning some things from Buddy Lee. So, I got full DJ equipment now. I've been upgrading my studio a little bit. So I'm going to be teaching myself how to DJ. I got a really good person that I'm following on YouTube. And so I'm really like trying to get my music bag. So for all the copyrighted music, you'll start seeing that on Twitch. So I'm just streaming over there to just kind of start building that content. But feel free to head over to Twitch and follow my account there. It is at I am Lady Fresh, like I am _ Lady Fresh. So it's pretty much the same across the board. The Dirty Kenzo, thank you so much. Happy 420 to everybody. Paige Hall, thank you so much. I know I'm not crazy. I am pretty certain that I saw Lenore Sadler in my chat. I cannot find it, but I know I saw her name. Salute to you and thank you so much for watching. My family at home in New York, my church family, people that watch me grow up have been tuning into the show and tuning into this series. And I'm just so grateful to all of you guys for your support. Shank Rock, thanks so much. Again, Jen Slayton, thank you for pulling up and being a part of the show and even watching and tonight's show. Virgo Views, thank you so much. I think I got everybody. Please, if I missed you, charge it to my mind and not my heart because I love all of you guys. So this was our awareness for April. I'm still going to work on that 4th episode, hopefully before the end of the month. Can't make a promise, but I'm definitely going to promise you that I'm going to work on it. We have a lot of awarenesses for the month of May. I am leaning towards mental health month and possibly lupus awareness. Mental health is recognized along with self-care in September as well. There's a lot of awarenesses for May. I may have to tackle 2 or 3 of them if I can. But as far as trying to put together a panel, I'm thinking lupus might be a good one for May. What do you guys think? I'm thinking I might want to do lupus. It's a lot of different awarenesses we can cover. I went over a couple last time. We have Parkinson's Awareness Month. I'm trying to think of some of the ones I didn't mention last time. Stress Awareness Month, that might be a good one to cover. I didn't even know that was, oh no, that was April. Let me go back to May. Okay, so we got Nurses Week, Oncology Nursing Month, Older Americans Month, National High Blood Pressure Education Month. We have World Lupus Day, International Museum Day, Correctional Officers Week, Teachers Appreciation Week. Let's see, International Firefighters Day, Nurses Week, Public Service Recognition Week. What else? Let's see. Bike to Work Day. That's different. Sunscreen Day, National Women's Health Week, Teachers Appreciation Week, National Hospital Week. It's quite a few different things in here. National Foster Care Month. That's a good one. I think I like the idea of doing lupus awareness. Liz favors Trisha. She do kind of look like her a little bit, don't she? All right. Well, you guys, I appreciate you guys again for tuning in. I almost hate to see this end. I really enjoyed doing the series. It was a lot of work. I happened to have a little time off so I could focus on it. But this is the type of content I really like to do. I appreciate you guys for the support. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so. I'm trying to get to my thousands, my 1,000 subs. So I'm close to halfway there. I know. But she do. When I look at her though, she does. I do think of your mom. So, but anyway, you guys, thanks again so much. I am gonna get ready to end this live. Don't be surprised if I pop back on later, because I really want to talk about that conclusion to Snowfall. There's a lot of people that was disappointed. I have mixed reviews about it, but I got to get a panel together to discuss it. So if I don't do it today, I will definitely do it before the weekend is over, because that's the end of an era. Okay. But thank you so much, everybody. Y'all having good rest of the week. And take away something from what you've learned here over the last 3 days. I know I did. I'm super grateful to everyone for all their expertise and being so transparent. Everybody was so transparent. My parents, they were so transparent about their experiences and the things that they go through with their children, even adult children. And so I feel like we learned so much. I know I did. I'm going to continue learning so that I can be more aware, and also look at this as more than just a month of awareness for autism. It's also teaching us how to be more accepting. And I think that's something that we need to be more of across the board, period, no matter what we're discussing. Is being more accepting. And it's okay to not understand completely, because none of us understands everything 100%. Otherwise, we'd be the smartest person in the room and there wouldn't be nothing for us to learn. And what sense does that make, right? So constantly, look to educate yourself, to make yourself more aware, more accepting, and hopefully tuning into the Fresh Perspective on all of these different awareness episodes that I produce for you guys. I'm hoping that is doing it for you. So again, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. I appreciate you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit my email, or you can follow me on Instagram and send me a DM if you have show topics that you would like for me to cover. We don't just do awarenesses, we talk about other things as well. I've brought on credit specialists. We've talked about crypto. I really want to do another crypto episode. We've had artists, authors, and that's the type of content I want to keep producing. So if you got ideas, the fresh perspective 22@gmail.com, that's how you reach me. Send me a email, give me some ideas. If you don't want to send an email, you can send me a message on IG or TikTok. I don't check TikTok that much, so you're probably better off on IG. But yeah, either one, at @IAM_Lady Fresh. That's going to be your best way to reach me directly. And feel free to use my community wall if you want to post something and say, cover this topic. I want to, hear about it. Don't hesitate. I'm open to it. Lady Fresh has the best. Oh, Jen, you so sweet. You be making me feel so good about myself. Autism is 24/7, 365 for me, not just 1 month. You sent me a message when I let you know that I was going to do this, and you were telling me thank you for covering this topic. And I need to just say this. I received so many messages from people like I don't even know. I didn't even know watch me. But I've gotten IG messages, emails, Facebook messages from people just saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you for even having it. We didn't even start the series yet. Just thank you for even wanting to bring awareness to this. Thank you for giving people a voice." Miss Callie was like, "Oh, I definitely want to share my story. Thank you so much for giving me a platform." After the first episode, I got a lot. They was like, "Oh, Miss Slayton was great. She offered a lot of resources. I'm on her website right now. Thank you. Keep up the good content." All of those positive reinforcements and feedback, you guys, I love it and I appreciate it. It makes me very humble. And it lets me know that despite what my number says as far as who's in, the number of people viewing me or the number of people that subscribe to my channel, it's reaching people and it's making a difference. And for me, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So, while goal is to be monetized and to be able to reach a larger platform, the fact that I'm reaching people right now and people are taking the time to thank me for it, it makes me feel really good. So again, thank you to all of you guys. I really do appreciate the love. I appreciate the feedback. And just, keep it coming because it keeps me going. I'm happy to finally be back on YouTube. So just, keep showing me the love and I'll keep pouring out the content, you guys. But again, thanks. Have a good rest of the week. And be sure to tune in for upcoming episodes. I'll be announcing what we'll cover in May very soon. But I'll see you guys this weekend with some new content, hopefully. So you guys enjoy the rest of your night.
Rock bottle on the track, boy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Lady Fresh, keep it real, and that's a fact. She gon' tell it like it is, that's just that on that. Yeah, yeah, that's just that on that. This the fresh perspective with Lady Fresh. Lady Fresh, keep it real, and that's a fact. She gon' tell it like it is, that's just that on that. Yeah, yeah, that's just that on that. Tune in every week, rockin' with Lady Fresh.
This is Two Peas in a Pod.
Cass.
I'm your host, Rich.
And I'm your host, DK.
And you are now tuned in to Lady Fresh and the Fresh Perspective.
You know, like I said, I always try to express my feelings, you know, to everybody. You know, it's a lot of
Fresh perspective, real empowerment, you better be respected. Lady Fresh on that motherfucking check-in. Weezy got her back, she stay protected. This the fresh perspective, real empowerment, you better be respected. This for the jiggers, it's to get you through the night. Not for the haters, bet you they don't come outside.
Lady Fresh Brown, and that's